The washing machine makes a sound on a Thursday evening that is not the sound it is supposed to make. A grinding, low and rhythmic, somewhere between the spin cycle and the drain. A hesitation that was not there last week. A knock that suggests something inside. The housing has moved from where it was designed to sit and has found a new position that is close enough to function but wrong enough to announce itself. Someone is already standing up from the kitchen table, already walking toward the sound, not with the body language of inconvenience or the resigned posture of a person being asked to deal with something, with the posture of a person who has been given permission to do the thing they are best at. There is a difference between those two postures, and it lives in the shoulders. The first posture carries the shoulders forward and slightly rolled, the body saying, I have to. The second pulls the shoulders back and levels them, the body saying, I get to. The machine is pulled from the wall. The back panel is removed with a socket wrench that was retrieved from the garage without hesitation, from a specific drawer, without looking. Inside the machine, components appear in a layout that was designed by an engineer in a factory 1,000 miles away and documented in a manual that is either lost or sealed behind a website that requires a model number and a registration. None of that matters. The layout is being read in real time, the way a musician reads sheet music in an unfamiliar key, but whose intervals are recognizable because intervals are universal. The problem will be located in less than 5 minutes. The repair will take 3 hours. A new machine would take 3 minutes to order and arrive by Tuesday. The arithmetic is irrelevant. It was never relevant. Something else is driving the hands into the back of the machine, and it does not use numbers. This is not stubbornness, not a refusal to participate in the convenience of modern commerce, not a personality trait that can be labeled as handy and dismissed. Something more structural is underneath the removed back panel, and it has less to do with washing machines than with a specific architecture of mind that treats every unfamiliar system as a sentence in a language it already speaks. Psychologists call it internal locus of control, the internalized belief that outcomes are determined by effort and understanding rather than by luck, circumstance, or the intervention of someone with a credential. The machine is not broken. It is temporarily not understood. The distinction between those two framings is the entire architecture. A person with a deep internal locus of control does not encounter a failed system and think this requires a specialist. They think this requires time, their hands, their willingness to sit with something they do not yet understand until the not understanding becomes understanding, and the understanding becomes action, and the action restores the function. The specialist is not rejected out of arrogance. The specialist is unnecessary because the belief system does not include the category of machine that is beyond comprehension. Every machine was built by a person. Every design follows a logic. Every logic can be traced by hands that are patient enough to trace it. A bearing housing exposed inside the drum assembly. The corrosion visible on the outer race. The part number stamped into the casting and raised characters designed to survive the environment the bearing was built to operate in. Fingers tracing the number the way fingers trace an inscription on a monument, reading what was left behind by the person who designed the system, following the logic backward from failure to cause. Embodied cognition research provides the framework for understanding how the transfer works, how a person who has never opened a washing machine before can diagnose one in minutes. The hands are cognitive organs. They do not merely execute the brain's instructions. They carry their own intelligence, accumulated across every previous interaction with every previous object. The way a bolt threads, the way a clip releases under lateral pressure, the way tension distributes through a spring, the way a seal deforms under heat. These are not discrete pieces of knowledge filed under separate appliances. They are a unified physical vocabulary, a grammar of mechanical systems that applies across every machine human beings have ever designed, because every machine human beings have ever designed is built from the same principles: levers, bearings, seals, fasteners, gears. The person who can fix anything is not a person who has memorized the service manual of every appliance in the house. They are a person whose hands speak a language that is older than any single machine and more universal than any brand name, and the language translates on contact. The clip releases. It releases the way every clip of this type has released for 30 years, under lateral pressure, with a click that the fingers expected before the ears confirmed. The hands knew before the eyes verified. The knowledge, getting the finish right, is the hardest part of any project. If you have ever dealt with bubbles, streaks, or a coat that just would not dry, we put together a guide that covers everything the can does not tell you. Scan the code on screen or check the first comment below. It is not stored in the memory. It is stored in the skin. Dr. Kelly Lambert's research on the effort-driven reward circuit explains why the repair is pursued far past the point where the economic calculation would recommend stopping. The neural pathway connecting physical hand movement to serotonin and dopamine production does not fire at a fixed intensity. It responds to resistance. A problem that yields immediately a loose wire reconnected, a tripped breaker reset, produces a brief, shallow pulse. A problem that resists, that requires the disassembly of an unfamiliar system, the identification of a failed component, the sourcing of a replacement, the reassembly and the test, and the moment when the machine resumes its function and the sound is correct again, produces a reward that deepens with every stage. The depth is proportional to the difficulty, and the difficulty is proportional to the resistance, and the resistance is the thing that makes the repair worth doing. Calling a service technician eliminates the resistance. It also eliminates the reward. The forfeiture is not financial, it is neurochemical. The repair provides a sustained activation of the only reward pathway in the week that is not mediated by a screen, a meeting, or an approval from someone else. The hands do the work, the circuit fires, the machine runs. The satisfaction is private and complete and needs no external validation to register as real. The bearing slides out of the housing. The replacement, sourced from a supply house found online at midnight the night before, slides in. The fit is exact. The satisfaction is not about the fit, it is about the knowing. The knowing that the fit was discovered, not purchased. Found, not delegated. Earned through the willingness to open the back of a machine that was designed to discourage opening. The reminiscence bump locates the developmental origin of the capacity with a precision that the neuroscience alone cannot achieve. The identity template, the moment when fix-it became I am the person who fixes things, was set during the years when identity was being formed. The first successful repair, a bicycle chain reattached at 14, a car starter diagnosed at 19, a kitchen faucet fixed the first week of living alone without calling anyone because calling someone was an admission that did not fit the self that was being assembled. The repair was not a practical victory, it was an ontological one. It established a foundational belief about the relationship between the self and the physical world. The world responds to attention. The world yields to effort. The distance between broken and working is not a wall, it is a gap. And the gap can be crossed by a person who is willing to be present with the problem for longer than the problem expects. Every repair since has confirmed the belief. Every machine encountered for the first time and left functioning has added a data point to a data set that now contains decades of evidence. The belief is no longer a belief. It is an identity. And the identity, once formed, does not include the option of looking at a broken machine and deciding that someone else should be the one to understand it. There is someone who cannot walk through a building without conducting an involuntary audit of its systems. The hinge that needs shimming because the door drags at the bottom. The outlet plate that is warm to the touch, suggesting a connection behind it that is corroding. The ceiling fan that wobbles on the second speed because one blade is a quarter ounce lighter than the others. The world presents itself as a series of systems, and the systems present themselves as legible, and the legibility is not a choice. It is a perceptual filter that was installed during the formative years by someone who opened the back of something and said the equivalent of, look at this is why it does that. And the looking never stopped. The filter cannot be turned off. The building is evaluated before the front door is reached. The car is assessed by its idle before the key is fully turned. The hinge is noticed before the room is entered. The noticing is not expertise in the credentialed sense. It is a way of seeing that organizes the entire visual field into two categories, working correctly and not working correctly. And the not working correctly category produces a pull that is not optional and not deniable, and that has, on more than one occasion, resulted in a repair being performed in someone else's house at someone else's party without being asked because the pull is stronger than the social convention of ignoring a dripping faucet. There's another whose neighbors know to call when something breaks, the dishwasher that stops mid-cycle, the garage door opener that hums but does not lift, the sprinkler system that has a zone running when it should not be. The calls come without hesitation because the pattern has been established over years and the reliability is known. The dishwasher is always fixed, the garage door always lifts again, the sprinkler zone is always identified and corrected. The thanks that follows takes the form of food or beer or the particular handshake that men use when they are saying something that the handshake is more comfortable expressing than the voice. The food is eaten, the beer is drunk, the handshake is returned. The connection between the repair and the gratitude is not always made consciously because the repair was not a favor. It was the exercise of a capacity that the body requires the way a runner's body requires movement. Not performing the repair, when the repair is known to be possible, would produce a discomfort that the social inconvenience of showing up with a toolbox does not produce. There's another whose family calls when anything mechanical or electrical or structural fails in any of their houses. Parents, siblings, in-laws. The calls come from across states. Some can be diagnosed by phone with a sequence of questions that sounds to the person on the other end, like an interrogation conducted by someone who can see through the phone. Is it humming or clicking? Humming. Is the humming constant or intermittent? Intermittent. Does it change when you open the door? Yes. The diagnosis is delivered with the particular confidence of someone who has heard that combination of symptoms before, and who knows, from the pattern, what the failed component is before the back panel is removed. The in-laws, who once questioned the practicality of someone who took apart the toaster on Christmas morning, now call first. Before the technician, before the warranty service, before the internet. They call because the toaster was fixed on Christmas morning and has worked without incident since, and the evidence is sufficient. There is another who fixed a clock that had been on a mantelpiece for 2 decades without working. The clock was opened, the movement examined, the mainspring identified as the point of failure. A replacement was sourced from a specialty supplier found at 1 a.m. during a search that began as curiosity and ended as commitment. The clock now runs. It gains approximately 2 seconds per month. The 2 seconds are not corrected because the 2 seconds are evidence, not of imperfection, of the conversation between the hands and the mechanism, a conversation that was conducted without a manual, without a credential, without the permission of the manufacturer, and that resulted in a machine resuming a function it had been denied for 20 years. The 2 seconds per month are the accent of the repair. They are the tell. They are the signature of hands that said, "I can figure this out," and were correct. There is another who took apart a lawnmower engine on a folding table in the driveway because the mower would not start, and the repair shop quoted a price that was higher than a new mower. The engine was disassembled over 2 evenings. The carburetor was cleaned with a wire and a can of cleaner. The gasket was replaced with one cut from a sheet of gasket material, using scissors and a sharp pencil. The engine was reassembled. It started on the second pull. The mower has been running for 4 years since. The folding table has oil stains that have not been cleaned because the stains are not stains. They are the record of an evening when a machine that had been sentenced to the landfill was pardoned by a person who did not accept the sentence. What most people see when they observe someone who can fix anything with their hands is a useful trait, a practical talent, a person who saves money on service calls and is good to have as a neighbor. What is actually happening is a way of perceiving and inhabiting the physical world that modern consumer culture is systematically designed to eliminate. The internal locus of control tells us the person has built their identity on the belief that the world yields to attention and that no system is beyond comprehension. The embodied cognition research tells us the hands carry a universal mechanical vocabulary that transfers across every system they encounter, because the vocabulary is older than any individual machine and is built from principles rather than products. The effort-driven reward circuit tells us the repair produces a depth and duration of neurochemical satisfaction that no act of purchasing or delegating can replicate. The reminiscence bump tells us the identity was formed early and has been confirmed by decades of evidence that the belief is correct. The person who fixes things is not handy. They are someone for whom the physical world is legible in a way that the abstract world often is not, and every broken machine is a sentence they can read in a week that is otherwise written in a language they were never fully taught. The fixing is not a hobby. It is the exercise of the deepest competence they possess, and the world that tries to make the fixing unnecessary is a world that is asking them to abandon the part of themselves they trust most. If you have ever heard a sound in your house that was not the right sound and felt something rise in your chest that was not dread but its opposite, a readiness, a quiet electricity, the particular sensation of being called to the one thing you're certain you can do, the question is not where the certainty came from. The question is what happens to a person when the machines stop breaking, when the neighbors stop calling, when the house runs silent and smooth and there is nothing left that requires the specific intelligence that only your hands possess, and whether the silence that follows is rest or something closer to exile from the only country where you have ever held citizenship. If this video gave you a new way to understand what happens in your workshop, there is something we made for you. In the first comment below this video, there is a link to a guide we put together on how to get a perfect finish every time. Hundreds of subscribers already have their copy. It might be worth a look.